Thanks, Joe. I'm going to do something slightly different again, I suppose, and talk a little bit about why media arts should be part of this curriculum and why it's very important and exciting that media arts is part of the national curriculum. It wasn't inevitable that media arts would be part of the arts. It was through the good work of Australian teachers of media, and particularly people like Derek Weeks and Roger Dunscombe in Victoria, and their work then with the National Advocates for Arts Education and the support of people like Julie, that made it possible for media to be included within the arts. So I would first of all like to start off by acknowledging that work and thanking those people for including media. Media learning is a bit of a strange beast in that, English curriculum has a strong role to play in teaching young people about the media and in media education generally. And there's obviously a lot of work that happens in areas like ICT's curriculum that is media-like. So one of the most important roles that I think I've had to play in working on this shape paper has been to advocate or to outline why media should be part of the arts. Australian Teachers of Media very strongly believes that media should be part of the arts because it's through play with media technologies that most young people these days are engaging with the media. Increasingly, young people aren't just users of media, they are also producers of media content and so on. And I think, that's the strong thrust that comes through. I've had two really inspiring experiences this week that have once again convinced me overwhelmingly that media needs to be part of the arts and that we will be able to do some really amazing work through media in schools once it is part of this national curriculum. The first was last night I was lucky enough to be invited along to Victoria Point State High School's Film and Media Awards night, where they handed out awards to students from Year 8 right through to Year 12. And just seeing that work was quite amazing. Seeing work from Year 8 students where they're working with software and technology to produce little flash animations and those kinds of things and little advertising campaigns, but to do it in a way that's very much about creativity with media. It's not about necessarily critical thinking about the media, although that is definitely part of it. It's about the creative practices with those technologies. And then seeing right through to the Year 11 mock documentaries and the horror films being made by the Year 12 students and so on. All of those amazing pieces of work are creative pieces of work. And I don't think anyone can deny that. So you'll see that media is described in this shape paper as storytelling using communications technologies. And that's obviously a crucial part of how we're defining media arts in this curriculum. So ICT's people don't typically tell stories with media technology. Sometimes they do, but that's not the main thrust of what they do. And in English classrooms, sometimes they do use communications technologies, but typically they don't. They will occasionally make short films. They sometimes get into making things like podcasts, but it's not the main thrust of what they do either. So using these communications technologies creatively, we believe definitely should be part of the arts. The other thing I saw this week was some Year 3 students learning to use iMovie. And it was just a wonderful experience to see these students being shown how to use the software. And these students have never used iMovie before. So they literally, and they hadn't used Mac computers before. So they literally opened up the computer, turned it on, they were shown how to launch iMovie. They were then shown, and there was some existing footage within iMovie, so they didn't have to shoot the footage on this occasion. but they were shown how to start selecting their footage and put it up onto the timeline, how to add some little effects to the footage, how to start putting transitions between the shots and so on. And eventually, by the end of the session, this was only an hour later, the students had a little piece that had titles on it. It kind of made sense. It had some nice effects on it. They had lots of fun with it. But it was just wonderful to see them playing with that technology and talking about play-based learning and talking about that then leading to further conceptual understandings and so on. That was really inspiring too. So that's where we're coming from with media arts. We believe that when this curriculum gets going, we will be the only place in the world to have media arts being mandatory for every young person from K to 8, and I think that's extraordinary.
And finally, Cindy Hales. Yes, it's me. There weren't too many chairs to go. In starting my conversation with you, I might just tell you a little bit about my background. I, as a visual arts teacher, taught for 9 years in Brisbane, but I've spent the last 15 years working in far north Queensland, teaching for substantial periods of time in remote Aboriginal communities, and most recently working within and across the far north Queensland region with primary and secondary arts teachers, connecting them across a very diverse geographic area. So as I sat in the illustrious group of educators and doctors and professors and people that were represented over the extended development of the shape paper, as one of the teachers sitting there with other primary teachers from other rural and remote, urban and provincial areas, thinking in our minds, how would we do this? How are we going to bring our colleagues along? How are we going to engage this and have it exciting and inspiring in a classroom when we know what we've got? And sometimes it's not a sync. Sometimes it's not a performance space. Sometimes there's no undercovered area where you can actually dance or move. And sometimes there's no media lab for you to go and work in. So we do understand those things. But the voice of the teachers was absolutely pervading all of the time from all of the states. We just have to give this a go. In Queensland and Tasmania, our curriculums are very similar in terms of having 5 strands or now arts forms recognised, and we've been lucky enough to be working with that P10 arts curriculum for some time now. And I know when we started that work in far north Queensland, teachers right across the area were saying, we can't do it. We don't know enough. I'd love to be able to do it, but I don't know what to do. And we started relationships of parallel practice, of not saying that there's an expert and a novice, about saying there's lots that you know that you don't know, and there's lots that we don't know that you know, and getting people working together. And we did try to set up an Illuminate session this morning because there's a very disappointed bunch of teachers in far north Queensland sitting in a room that wanted to connect on Illuminate. But the opportunity through this recording is that statewide, not just far north, but statewide, we will set up Illuminate sessions with the recordings from this morning. And if you're not familiar with those sessions, there's an interactive chat room, there's a whiteboard, and there's the opportunity for audio and video linkages. So you can actually communicate real time now and also have it recorded on demand for those teachers that want to access it at different times. So the excitement that I see in my work, working with the advisory group, and also in my work leading learning communities of primary and secondary arts educators are these things. One is that we can absolutely, without embarrassment, go to our principals and say, the arts are absolutely important. There are national and social and historical and artistic and creative and all of those things imperative about actually doing something and delivering it. Not saying it can't be done just because we think we don't have the resources. The excitement to be able to provide young people with that opportunity to grow and learn with and for and about the arts from the earliest time that they walk in through our school gates to the time when they leave as experienced, and some of them semi-art professionals as they leave school. And we've seen the kind of incredible productions and artistic productions and creativity that our senior students leave and exhibit in their personal and school lives. The opportunity particularly in all of our communities, to establish those partnerships with our local cultures. There were very many deep conversations about how do we get some rich language in this shaping paper to make sure that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander knowledges are not regarded as some kind of historical study that sits on the side. That we absolutely embed throughout the whole document, and hopefully we'd like to see in the curriculum, the valuing and the embeddedness of that rich Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture as a living, breathing, dynamic, creative and very responsive culture to the contemporary world, as well as the spiritual historical world that we begin to know and understand. And how do we as teachers inspire those knowledges through creativity in our students so that we increase their capacity to articulate their own identities, to reprocess and present themselves in a creative form, to have that interaction, to define who they are, what they stand for, what they want to communicate. And I think that's really exciting. And the other thing that I think is particularly exciting to see in the document is the foregrounded partnerships with industry. When teachers don't have the expertise or feel that they don't have the expertise and want to provide opportunities for their students to really extend, often we go to industry, and I know how excited all of the arts industries were when we had the opportunity to write this national arts curriculum and to see themselves in their role in working with us in classrooms, because teachers can't do absolutely everything. But what we can do is forge some really strong partnerships to expand our experiences for all young people, whether you're in a Brisbane school, whether you're in a provincial school, whether you're in a rural school, or whether you're in a remote Aboriginal school where you fly in and fly out of sometimes once a week. And as Michael was telling his stories about watching young people engage with iMovie for the first time, be assured that right across the state there are young people from the Torres Strait Islands to far west and far southwest Queensland that are engaging and highly experienced in the arts with their teachers, utilising whatever range of technologies they need to do to access the knowledges and skills. And I think this work in particular is very exciting. I look forward to working with all of you on it.